Before I introduce you all to today's speaker, I would like to tell you a little about the Career Talk series that my brother and I started. So, my brother Shiv and I saw this lockdown as a great opportunity to expose students not only in India but across the world to a spectrum of careers. We hope to do so by bringing professionals from various domains to share their experiences and knowledge with us. So far, we've had over 15 career talks, this being our 17th one. Today we have invited Mrs. Shailja Dutt, who is the chairperson and founder of Stellar Search, as well as the chairperson of Stellar Search Foundation. She has been the principal architect of Stellar's growth over the last 20 years. During this journey, she has led the firm to a diversity of markets across the globe. As founder and chairperson of one of India's most respected leadership advisory firms, she has played a pivotal role in shaping the growth trajectories of a large number of organizations in corporate India, ranging from multi-business diversified conglomerates to new age startup ventures. She is sought after by leading Indian business houses and leading global MNCs for her advice and counsel on business transformation strategies, senior leadership and board level appointments, and organizational design and restructuring guidance. Mrs. Dutt is widely recognized as an industry thought leader and subject matter expert. She is also an active member of various leading industry bodies. For instance, she has served on the Delhi Board of Entrepreneur Organization, also called EO, and she has also served as Vice Chairperson of the Executive Recruiters Association, ERA. Now, before we let Mrs. Dutt begin, I would like to mention a couple of housekeeping rules that we would like you all to follow. Firstly, kindly keep yourselves muted, and we'd like to ask you to keep your videos on for today's session. This is a special request from our speaker. Secondly, please refrain from annotating while the presentation is being shared by Mrs. Dutt. And lastly, kindly send in your questions for our speaker in the chat box. We will pose your questions directly to our speaker in the latter part of the session. Thank you, and Mrs. Dutt, you may continue from here.
All right. So we really nice to see everyone's face. I love talking to people, and I hate talking to blank screens. And this is just so many blank screens. So it'd be so nice to see everyone's face. And I'm going to actually screen share. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into this after a very formal introduction. Thank you for that, Sarah. I'm actually going to introduce myself as how I like to see myself and what I like my CV to say. So everything's here, but if I were to cut this short, I would say that I'm an ideas person. I love solving problems. I absolutely love music. Rap is the new genre I'm learning about, thanks to my son, who's 17. I can actually talk a lot about it now. I love to read. And the minimum I've ever read in my life is 50 books a year. So I cannot tell you how many books I've read. My children feel that I have the negotiation skills of an FBI hostage negotiator, and I'm as clever as a spy. They've never gotten away with absolutely anything they thought they would get away with. The other thing about this when we go through here is that I'm actually very fit, and I can lift 120 kgs. That's twice my body weight off the floor several times. We call them reps. But and the thing that I actually love to do is I like watching people, which is why I requested that I wanted the screens on. So that's a more informal introduction about me. And the reason I'm talking to you, or the reason I'm here, or maybe why Rajiv invited me, is because in corporate world, people like me, they're referred to as headhunters, but I'd like to think of ourselves as we're kingmakers. We help kingdoms find better kings, and we help kings find better kingdoms to run. And that's what I do. And I've done that for many years. So what I'm really good at is identifying who has the talent to be the king, if I were to use a fairy tale analogy. And because we do that really, really well, I think it's easy for me to talk to students and tell them what we see in you, and we know you're going to be a great leader and very, very successful in life. So I'm going to start by actually asking you guys, and it'd be nice if you put it in the chat. And Tara, why don't you read from the chat when people do? What does success mean to you? And everybody who's logged on, maybe 1 or 2 words about what does success really mean to you. And let's do this like in 30 seconds, and then Tara can read out the answers really quickly. So are you getting responses on this?
Yeah, we have contentment, happiness, wealth.
Yeah, go on, keep reading, keep reading.
Being happy with what you do, recognition, following passion, satisfied.
And I assume that we have a mix of parents and students who are here, right?
Yes.
Okay, so very nice to hear about everyone talking about passion, because it's just such an important ingredient of success. But you know, success, the definition will change as when you're in. I mean, frankly, when I was in the 9th grade, success meant getting good grades. I came first in some race I ran. The boy I liked me back, and that was success. And then you went to college, and it was about, again, well, surprisingly, again, about good grades. And it was about the sort of internships we could get. There was a lot of peer pressure when you're in college. So it's always about, well, doing better than the person you sit next to in college, or your roommate, or so and so forth. So it was a lot about that. And then it was, you know, in my 20s and 30s, and maybe even my 40s, it was really about recognition and wealth and creating a company and taking it to different parts of the world. And then in my 50s, it really became about, am I really pursuing my passions, contentment, happiness, and so on and so forth. But it changes, and it will change for you. I know that a lot of students believe that really everything about success is, and a lot of times, especially in India, the pressure to just do well in school is so high that you think success is only about getting good grades or being in the right, or being the captain of the team's, you know, football team, cricket team, winning tennis championships. That is the only measure of success. And it probably is if you are really enjoying what you do. It isn't if you're not enjoying what you do. So, you know, for me, success has always been about being excited about what you do. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how, you know, success really works. What is the expectation? So when you're in school, I think that a lot of you feel that success is about, I'll get good grades, then I'm going to get into a great college, I'm going to do a great course, then I'm going to get a great job, and then I'm going to make a lot of money, and then I'm going to get famous. And you think that's, you know, it's a linear upward line. The fact is it's not. Success is going to be also a lot of the B's and C's that you will get. It is going to be the hits and misses about courses that you want to do. When you get a job, not every job is going to be a job that you like or a boss that you like. You may end up working with someone that you don't like. And all of you who are students who are on this this call, you should talk to your parents and ask them about their journey, and ask them about the horrible bosses they've had, the horrible jobs they've done, the horrible internships that they had to do, and the couple of times that they got the B's and the C's as well. So it's going to be this squiggly line with a lot of ups and downs. And it's very important that you actually embrace that reality. So we come to what happens when you're very successful. And I assume that in school, You're looking at success, grades, SAT scores, colleges that have, that you want to apply to, great dream colleges. For some, it's medicine, it's engineering. But, ask, and again, I know that your parents give you a lot of these lectures, and, the parents are going to thank me because I'm just repeating what they say. But success is really about a lot of other things. And it is about persistence. It is about pushing through what I call crap, which is a lot of criticism, a lot of resistance, a lot of, pardon my language, assholes, and a lot of pressure. It's really about pushing through that. You will fail, and failure is a great lesson to learn. I know that in school, in college, we're just scared about tripping and falling. We're scared about failing. But as you get older, you're going to realize you've learned so much more from the times that you failed than from the times you succeeded. But it's a lot about hard work and discipline and everything else. So now that we know that there's a lot to success, let's just talk about what makes a young adult or a teen or a young adult very successful, at least in the eyes of us who sit on the other side. We're parents, but we're also corporate leaders. We hire a lot of interns. We hire a lot of folks that work for us straight out of MBA schools, out of engineering schools. Why do we hire the people we hire? And what are some of the things that I have seen in my 25-year career that result in people being extremely successful? Before I go into all the other big fancy words, I'm going to say that the one thing that's really, really, really important, and a lot of kids don't do this, a lot of you don't do this anymore, is being aware of what's happening around you. The world's looking for more and more people who are aware about what's going on in the world and not just in your subject. So if you're studying the sciences or liberal arts, it's not about how much you know about economics and how much you know about quantum theory and how much you know about chemical reactions. It's a lot of success in life is going to come from being aware about what's happening in the world around you. And I can only share, I can see Rajiv on the screen, and I'm going to talk to him. But I remember in school, outside our the library that we had, we would have newspapers that would be put there for us to read. And a lot of us would go every single day and read the newspaper, sometimes together. And that was the only way we got news. You, on the other hand, have the luxury of getting news through many, many different platforms. It's very important for you to know what's happening in the world and not just in the subjects you study or your passions. Oh, well, I know everything that's happening in football, but you also need to know what's happening in tennis and cricket and everything else. And I can give you an example of how this has backfired in interviews that I've seen young students give for top universities. So my older son, who's a graduate now, was interviewing with a Singapore school for his undergrads in economics. And, he was all set to talk about himself and all the projects he had done and how great he was and how much, and really, answer questions about economics. The fact is that they called, this was a telephonic interview, a Zoom, a video interview, and they called him, and their opening question, which had him totally stumped, was, so you're based out of Delhi, what's going on in India? And that was the question. That was the question that would decide whether he would get into this school or not. There was no question that was asked about economics. There was no question that was asked about his grades. This was what was asked. And that's what the panel asked him. They tried to lead him on with politics, etc. Unfortunately, he wouldn't, he wasn't reading the papers at all or reading the news on his phone or on his computer, anywhere. He just was not aware. And I can't tell you how taken aback he was with that question, because he was so prepared to talk about everything else. This is literally the first thing we look in when we hire interns, and I can tell you most companies do that. They want to know, what do you know, and what do you know beyond the subjects that you're studying. I remember my own MBA interview. Again, I'm an economics student. I've prepared everything. I've gone over my economics course so many times. I was ready to answer anything they asked. They asked me about the US presidential primaries. And I can't tell you, I was so glad I used to read the papers. We have a firm who is very articulate, very sought after by our clients. Everybody wants to work with him because he's a geopolitical expert. He's an engineer and an MBA, but he's really, really aware of what's happening in the world. He has a point of view on it. It's very important for you to have that. Because when you come in to interview with us, with other companies, the first thing we're going to ask you is, general awareness questions. So before I jump into what makes someone successful, this is like the very bare minimum that I think you need to do. And if you're not reading the news, if you're not following what's happening in the world, if you don't know what's happening in the country you live in, and you don't have an opinion about it, I think that your interview is just going to go downhill from there. It doesn't matter what grade you have. So let's talk about the things that look great on a CV. You do really well in your interview. Passion is what we look for when we're looking for young students to come and intern. All companies do that. Google does that. Amazon does that. We do that. Unilever does that. Everybody does that. They are looking for passion. It's the #1 indicator of success. You really don't want to be wasting your time with interns who are not passionate about anything. They turned up because, well, their parents made them come for this internship. They really didn't want to be there. So first of all, please don't intern in places where you think that it's, my parents think it's the right thing. Intern in places you want to intern in, where you're really passionate about what they do. Because that's what they're going to look for even when they interview you. The other thing about passion is that whatever you do with passion, you can talk about it with great conviction. It's not rehearsed. It comes from the inside. We're all pretty seasoned interviewers, and we can really see through that in a heartbeat. We can just see through it when you are faking it, when we know that you're here because your parents wanted you to be here or your counselor thought it was a great internship to do, versus when you're really passionate. And we also know about subjects. If you hate maths and you come and you tell me, oh, I love maths, it's my favorite subject. And then we start asking you questions. And you're stumbling all over those questions because actually you just hate maths. You're not passionate about it. You're very passionate about literature. The fact is that you're going to know. The interviewer is going to know. So look for things that make, you're passionate about. Look for internships in places where you will be passionate about working. Later in life, you'll be able to talk about these internships with great conviction. You'll be able to talk about what you learned from them with great conviction. The other thing that, we really look for, and when I say by we, I mean the larger corporate world, is accountability. I don't know how many students are there on this call, but I've been a mom to 2 boys, and I've very often heard them, when I'm talking to them about their grades. And I'm saying, why wasn't this B plus and A? And they're like, oh, my teacher's too biased. And, my teacher doesn't like me. And that's why my grade's not good. And I don't know how many parents are here who've heard that same excuse. The fact is, what did you do about it? That's what I'm interested in knowing. That what did you do about it other than complain to your parents? Or tell your parents like, well, you need to come to school and talk to the teacher. Did you do something about it? Did you walk up to the teacher and talk to them and say that, I feel I did a good job. Can you please tell me, where did I go wrong? And what can I do to make sure this doesn't happen again? That's the sort of attitude companies look for. And I assume that most of you who finished 10th grade would have done an internship this summer. The ones who are in the 9th grade, you will do an internship after you finish your 10th grade, and then again after the 11th and the 12th, and maybe through college. The fact is that you're going to go to places for internships. You cannot be blaming other people for things you don't do. So it's very, very important. And this is a good skill for you to develop. Take accountability, take things to closure, be able to talk about it. You should be able to talk about it in your internship interviews, that this is something I took accountability for and I took it to closure despite the pressure, despite the awful teachers, despite my awful teammates, I made it happen. And if you have passion and you have accountability, let me tell you that you've got like 70% covered. It's really what we look for. The other thing that I think is really, really important is communication. And I cannot stress the importance of this over and over again and enough, that you need to read. You need to read the newspapers, you need to read books, you need to read articles on the net. You need to read. Just watching videos, to think that all knowledge is going to come from YouTube videos is not going to be enough. You cannot speak well and you cannot write well if you don't read. And if you develop this skill while you're still in school, I can promise you that when you're in college, you're going to remember Shailja auntie gave us this lecture about reading, and you're going to thank me for it. There is no substitute for reading, because, and a lot of you who are preparing for your SATs or have given your SATs, you learn a lot of things in your vocab. You don't have good grammar. This is a problem that we see in India a lot. When we're hiring interns in India, we find kids who are very passionate, they have very good grades, they're very accountable, they have terrible communication skills. The fact is, to get ahead in life, you need to have great communication skills, written and oral, both, and you need to read for that. And I cannot stress the importance of just reading. It's very, very important. And to follow that up is listening. It's equally important. And I'm going to give you an example of an actual intern situation that happened in our office. And it's about listening skills. It's about active listening. Active listening is about taking notes. It's what you do when you're in class. It's what you do when you're at tuition centers. You take notes, and that helps you remember. I also feel that taking notes is a great idea, because ideas come from listening and taking notes. You get very good ideas. You don't get good ideas when you think you have everything in your head. I know what I have to do. But you didn't actually make a list because you weren't really listening. So I'll give you an example of great active listening and an internship situation that actually happened in my office. So 2 summers ago, we had a bunch of kids from UWC in Singapore who were interning. They were school kids that finished their 10th grade and they were my son's friends and they'd come to intern at Stellar. And we had 2 MBAs who were interning with us. We were sitting in a meeting with the interns and talking about our website. And we were talking about the new website coming up and how we wanted more artificial intelligence embedded in the website. We wanted chatbots. And we were talking about the cost and price and so on and so forth. And the meeting ended, and I asked one of the students, the school students, that could you call agency XYZ and tell me if they can integrate a chatbot into our website. And I told the MBA intern to do exactly the same thing with another set of agencies. It's quite surprising that the school kid spoke to the agencies. He not only told me whether they can do the job or not, he told me how much it would cost, how long it would take them, and what could be some other options I can consider. The MBA intern came back to me and said, these 3 agencies can do this for you. The fact is that I love that school kid. I would hire that school kid tomorrow. I would write an incredible recommendation for that school kid because they were actually, the bunch of school kids were listening to what we were saying and they were taking notes, and they realized that our problem is not just getting that chatbot on the website. Our problem was also about cost. It was also about time. And he decided he wanted to get all the answers for us. And that is the difference between a great internship and a great recommendation and a blah recommendation that you're going to get, where you will intern with a company and you will not be memorable because you didn't go out of your way to do anything exceptional, because probably you weren't listening in the meetings because those meetings are so boring anyway. And then you get a recommendation, so-and-so interned with us and they were very good and conscientious and wonderful and blah, 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 but nothing exceptional. I want to tell you that I wrote such an incredible recommendation for this student, which I hope he's going to use in his college application, which really talked about the fact that he was passionate, he was great communication skills, extremely accountable, and basically just an incredible kid who went above and beyond. So that's the difference when you listen and you don't listen. And that's why listening is as important as speaking well and writing well. Self-confidence. I mean, this is my all-time favorite discussion with kids, is when you're in classes, when you're in your internships, when you're doing projects. I think, when I observe children, I feel that they worry too much about looking good. And I think that's the worst thing to do for your self-confidence. It's a self-confidence killer. And if you don't have self-confidence and it's not reflected in your CV, again, I mean, there are no great internships or great recommendations waiting for you. You have to stop being scared of sounding silly. You have to stop being scared of saying, oh, I don't think I'll ask that question because it looks like it's a very silly question. The biggest confidence killer is the fear you have in your head about how you will look in front of your friends or your parents friends or whatever it is that you're interning. But I genuinely believe that the kids who are brave enough to ask anything that's going on in their mind are the ones who learn the most and eventually come across as extremely self-confident. They're not scared. They're not scared of failing. They're not scared of being, silly. And this is the last trait that companies look for, and we call it a growth mindset. Are you better today than you were yesterday? Are you significantly better today than you were last year? Have you improved at anything that you do? And this is a typical, if you're going to college, it's a typical thing that counselors are going to tell you, that colleges will look for this too. They're going to look for how you improved your grades. They're not looking for a straight A. Every college is not looking for someone who's just aced everything all the time. That's just too much pressure. But they're looking for, how did you improve? How did you get better? And I read this book and I think it changed my life, and I'm going to refer back to the 120 kg deadlift on my resume, is that if you improve just 1% every day, if you compound that, and frankly, I hate maths, I'm not good at maths, so I'm not going to tell you how that works at the end of the year, but if you improve 1% every day, the compound effect of that is going to be so huge. And I'm going to take that analogy and talk to you about study time or off-screen time. If you study for, hypothetically, 3 hours, you're a kid who hates to study, but you have to go to a good college, and you know that you have to get into a good course, and you're studying 4 hours every day. Do you think you can improve that by just 2 or 3 minutes every single day? You're going to come to a point where you will be studying the optimal amount that is required. Your parents are going to be like thrilled with you, but you're not going to have to, it's not going to be like, today I studied 4 hours and tomorrow I have to study 5 hours. It's going to be, today I studied 4 hours and tomorrow I just have to study 4 hours and 3 minutes. And then it's going to be, I studied for 4 hours and 3 minutes, and now I'm going to just study for 4 hours and 6 minutes the day after, and so on and so forth. That's how good habits get built up. That's how you improve. This is what we're looking for when we are looking at interns. It's exactly what colleges look for when they're looking at students. Is, do you have a growth mindset? How did you improve day after day? And to do this, the book that I read, and I think it really made a difference, and I'm not recommending, of course, that children read that book, but I'm sure you can ask your parents to read it. And if you are avid readers, go ahead and read it. It's not a difficult book to read. It's a book called Atomic Habits by a guy called James Clear. And this is what helps you put it all together, setting your goals. How do you set goals? Do you think about them and their goals? I have decided I want to get into Princeton, and that's my goal. Did you write it down somewhere? Did you share it with people? What are you doing to achieve your goal? These are the sort of things that corporates also look for. And these are the things we ask you in interviews. In all honesty, these are the sort of things we ask you in interviews. How do you set goals? Do you write them down? Setting goals is about, so I'll give an example. So I talked to my son, he's a 12th grader, and I said, okay, so what's the plan for tomorrow? I'm going to study for my SATs. I said, that's great. And what you going to do? I'm going to study. I'm going to study. But I want to know, how much are you going to study? When are you going to study? How are you going to study? That's a real goal. So if you can make a calendar and decide every day that I am going to study during this time, this is my leisure time, this is my screen time, and you can follow that through. That's a goal. So I will be studying from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. That's a goal. But I'm going to study is not a goal. That's just a plan, and it's not a goal. And you're never, the thing is, you're going to spend a lot of time just deliberating. Should I? My friends are on, everybody is playing video games, or everybody's out playing football, or we're Zoom calling each other. And then that 3 hours is never going to happen. And these are traits that we look for, even when we're hiring interns. Any company that's hiring interns is going to look at, how do you achieve your goals? They're going to talk to you about, so you got very good grades. How did you do it? What was the secret sauce? And you have to know how you did that. And a lot of kids who are not getting those good grades, you need to start setting your goals. You need to write them down. And I always feel the best way to get through goals, companies do that, is they set targets, they set goals, and when you achieve them, there is a reward at the end of it. It's the same thing in life. It's the same thing in academia. You set a goal, you achieve it, and you reward yourself for it. That's how things get done. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about careers and jobs. And, I've talked to you about what companies look for when they hire interns. What are the soft skills you need to? These are the same skills that are going to really take you a long way in life. This is the skill set you need to have to face the big bad world out there. But I'll talk a little bit about the fact that there are many different kinds of jobs today. We didn't have access. We didn't have the opportunities to do that. You do. Please explore your passions deeply. Talk to people about what you're passionate about. Please don't study a subject just because there's peer pressure to study it or it's deemed the right thing to do. I know folks who passed out of UWC. My son goes to UWC in Singapore, and they were really passionate about theater, and a lot of them have made it into smaller parts in Broadway, but because they followed through on what they were passionate about. And then Broadway is a stepping stone for a lot of people into Hollywood. It's the fact is, and UWC has kids who become astronauts. It's about following your passion, and I think the school does a great job of pushing that with the children. But as a parent, I have really learned that it's better to encourage them to pursue their passions. If someone wants to be a chef, he should be studying food technology and certainly not be studying physics. So I know that everything that you hear from counselors and parents is very well-meaning, but I'm going to come back to the fact that do what you love doing. Your work's going to be great fun. You won't be a workaholic. We call people who follow their passions and really enjoy what they do workaholics. They just have fun at what they do. And that is the aim of life, because that's what, you heard that, contentment, happiness, that is success. So that's how it sort of comes together. I'm actually very happy to answer questions if you guys want about any specific career choices. I'm going to end this actually by this quote: you're the author of your story. You decide what you want to write and you write it, and you better do a really, really good job of it. And now I can just take questions about how to make a great CV, if you want to ask about any specific internship, etc. So I've covered a lot of the general high-level stuff, but happy to take very, very specific questions.
Okay, so we have one question as of now. We'll wait for a couple of minutes before we start so that we can let a few more come in.
Tara, would you like me to answer the question that is on the chat? How do students get internships?
Yeah, so the first question is, given that getting an internship in the current times is a little harder than it normally is, what are some techniques or skills we can adopt, like we as students can adopt, to make our resumes stand out?
All right, so I can read the chat, so I'm actually just going to read the questions off that and answer them. So in the current times, how do students get internships, given that the industry is in a downfall? So there's the fact is that there is a slowing down, everyone's feeling it. I can't tell you how many opportunities this opens actually for interns, because companies are looking for more and more people to do work for them for free, because they're laying off people. And this is the time you're going to get unpaid internships. This is a very, very good time actually for internships. It's about wanting to know what you want to do and reaching out. And given that everyone is working from home, or most people other than manufacturing is working from home, we have a lot more time to talk to people. So if someone reaches out, I had a situation where someone reached out to me and asked me if I could connect them to a client of ours, because it was showing on our website, for an internship. I actually liked the person so much. She's a first-year student at a university in the US. I liked her approach so much that she called, she followed up, she messaged, and she sent me her CV, and we hired her as an intern. And currently, I think normally we have 2 or 3 interns every summer. This year, we've had actually 6 interns working for us in the summer. So, and that's true for a lot of other places as well. And so I, on the other hand, don't think that this is a bad time for internship. It's actually about pushing yourself more effectively out there. And chances are that your WhatsApp messages or your LinkedIn messages will be read, because folks have a little more time. Rajiv, on your question of writing a good CV or a resume, what really sort of is very putting off for people when they're reading a resume is when we feel that it's full of bullshit. Kids should write the things that they have actually done. If you are talking about, I mean, in a student resume, it's their grades, it's the leadership opportunities that they've had or they've explored. It's about projects that they have done. Instead of making it look really, really fancy, it's what really impresses folks is when you write about what actually you achieved at the end of the project. How did it help? If you've done an internship, how did it help the organization? What did you contribute? Because it's very easy to write, I did a project on wastewater management in my complex. But what we are looking for is, I did the project with 5 other students, and we were able to, at X cost, install the best wastewater management system, or whatever it is, rainwater harvesting, or whatever it is that a child is doing. That you're looking for those outcomes on the CV. You're not looking at so if you were the head boy, what difference did you make to the student community while you were on the student council? That is what we're looking for in the resume. We're looking for the outcomes. We're not looking for what you've done. That's just data. What advice would I give someone who has not found their passion yet? They need to talk to someone who's an expert to help them discover what it is that they really like or what they're really strong with. A lot of times, when children realize they have an inherent strength, they become fairly passionate about it. So I think, Faria, it would be about having them talk to people who can help them uncover those strengths, and maybe have those conversations with them that can help unearth what their passions are. I think it just needs a lot of conversation and a lot of talking to and asking a lot of right questions. Colleges, of course, see thousands of applications from around the world, and all of them have amazing grades and extracurricular activities. I think the best way to stand out is a resume that demonstrates real passion. And there is a story in that application. It's the same with the CV, that are we seeing a story here? That if this child truly passionate about what they're doing and they believe that the college is going to add value to that passion and they're going to bring that passion to that college, I think that is when applications really, really stand out, because it's very, very competitive out there. And I may not be the best person to answer how do you make a college application stand out, but I can tell you how you make a life application or a CV stand out is when we see a story in the CV. And we see true passion coming out for a cause, a purpose, a subject, sometimes all of it. Oh, so Vansh, if you're looking for internships because you are looking at becoming a lawyer, you should intern at law firms. And a lot of them have programs for young students. A lot of them encourage you. You can go and spend a week shadowing a paralegal, a lawyer, seeing what they actually do. They may give you smaller projects, which may not be law related, but when they're going to meet clients, they need a lot of information on the clients. They prepare these huge dockets of information, which frankly, school kids are very, very good at doing, because you guys are very good at researching over the internet. So those are things that you can do as an internship in a law firm. And a lot of, you can reach out to me offline and I can tell you some of the law firms you can reach out to if you want to do an internship there. How do you effectively portray yourself on essays for college? I think the most important thing, and I'm again going to come back to, I'm not the college counselor, but I am someone who gets a lot of senior people jobs, and I've helped a lot of young kids get great internships, is that we're looking for authenticity. We're looking at you telling the truth. And in the essays that you talk about, it's, I've often spoken to kids who've written essays which somebody else, of course, has written for them, which has absolutely nothing or very little to do with the real experience that they've had. And I can tell you that when you come in and your essay is about a subject and you don't, passionate about it, it's not something that you were really focused on, when they question you about it, you're going to fail. Okay. And college essays, the right person to talk to is your college counselor. But if you're looking at just building a good CV and you're looking at internships in corporates, in the social sector, then I think if there are any essays they require you to write about yourself, please just write about things that you're truly passionate about. What does one do in an internship? So Naruto, it's very different in different companies, but ideally in an internship, you must come out of that internship learning something. It's, I think that it's good companies that really run very good intern programs. They have a fairly structured program around the internship that you will spend some time with the sales organization, some time with the marketing organization. And I'm going to, again, go back to an example of an internship my son did with a large global Fortune 100 company. And he said it was the most boring thing he had ever done in his life. because he said, I just went from department to department and I just met up with business heads and people and I understood what they did and I went on some market visits with them, but it was really boring and I didn't learn anything. That was a terrible internship. It looks very good on his CV. He learned nothing. And I don't think I can ever talk him into that again. But a good internship is where you will be given work to do and it'll be for someone in the company. It could be research. A lot of interns do research. It could be research. It could be writing. It could be editing documents. It could be analyzing data. If you're doing statistical courses in school, it could be analyzing data, but you will typically be given a project to do or a set of projects to do, and you have to deliver a particular outcome. That's a great internship, and you learn a lot. And they teach you, they handhold you. Someone from the company that you're interning with will tell you ways to get this done, but they're not going to do it for you. That's a good internship. Vansh is asking me if there's an internship in my company available. I'm very happy to put you in touch with our HR and they can tell you if we're looking for more interns. Nivedita, where else can I intern as a pure maths graduate other than academic and research firms? You could actually intern with a lot of think tanks, which are doing a lot of statistical analysis. There are a lot of think tanks that you can intern with. You can intern as in private equity firms, working under an analyst. That could be very interesting because you can see actual application of pure maths and statistics in terms of what they do when they're deciding whether they want to invest in a company or a business. I'd have to apply my mind a little bit more to that, Nivedita, but I think I can come up with many different options for you. With personal branding in mind, any thoughts how kids should use, Gadi, this is a good question. Any thoughts on how kids should use Instagram and other social media platforms in their high school and college years? So, we developed, and I'm going to talk about what these, again, school interns ended up giving us, which has become a part and parcel of life at Stellar now. Every time we would meet people, we would get onto the net, and I'm in the business of meeting senior leaders. So you get onto the net and you research about them and you look at, whatever you get on the first page of Google. When these interns came, they said, why don't we look at everything that this guy is on? So they were like, oh, you're going to meet Rajiv Kapoor. Let me look at what he tweets about. Let me get onto his Facebook page. Let me scour his Facebook page. Let me look at his Instagram, wherever I. And they started putting these persona reports together for us of people, which is like what IBM Watson does now. But it was everything. I think kids need to understand that when they go for internships or when they go to colleges, the colleges are looking at absolutely everything. They're going to look at where you've been tagged on Facebook. So you may be a really good kid with fabulous grades and a fabulous internship, and then you were tagged in some totally racial post or a post which had sexual content or racial content. And I can tell you that would be the end of your application. Kids have to be really cognizant about how they're using social media because they think that they're anonymous. They believe they know all the security settings. And a lot of companies that are looking at hiring you will not hire you till you give them access to this. And they want to see what your secret life is. So you have to be careful. I cannot again emphasize the importance of this. I've had folks who have seen one comment that someone made on Facebook, which was off color about about a fellow student, they're not going to get an internship anywhere. They're not going to get an internship in a great organization. Certainly, colleges will look at it. So. Aniket, I think I answered your question about what we should include in a CV, which distinguishes it from others who are equally passionate, is the outcome of projects that you've done, the outcome. That's very important. Don't put data in your CV. Put the outcome. Dhwani, how does someone choose the right career path if they're equally interested in two very different career sectors? I think this would be a very interesting question to take offline, because I'd like to understand what are the two career paths that you're contemplating. And I'd like to understand that could there be a marriage of both? And could we find something that could allow you to follow two passions with equal intensity? But it'd be really tough if you turned around and said, well, I want to study STEM and literature, and you were thinking of doing something like that. I don't know. I don't know what I would say to that. So I'm just saying that this question would be really good if you connect with me offline and you talk to me about what it is that you're looking at, and I could try and find an answer to that question. Communication skills that I would suggest an engineer who's just about to get a job. I hope that you write very well. I hope that you speak very well. I hope that you interview very well. And I hope that you listen very, very well. I want to tell you, Sushita, that I have met a lot of very, very bright engineers in the course of my career. And I've been, as I have been with MBAs, etc., and I've been just, their communication skills are deplorable. And it just shocks you and surprises you. They are not going to get front-end, people managing, leadership roles. So if you're aspiring for that, I come back to have the ability to have a good conversation, be aware, everything that I spoke about in my presentation. What are the internships that are possible? Someone who's interested in the financial markets, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of opportunities for you. There's banking, there are the NBFCs. You could work with individual investment firms. You could, another very interesting thing to put as an internship is how you have managed to invest in the market on behalf of an adult in your house. And if you did something spectacular there, that in itself, that's a self-internship. That could be very exciting. But there are lots. Harsh, you again, please connect with me if you're looking for some internships in the financial markets. I think I can help you. Aniket, I'm not on any platform like Instagram or Facebook. Will it create a negative impact? I don't think so at all. I think it just creates suspicion that why would someone from your generation choose not to be on any social media platform? But I don't think it creates any negative impact. And of course, I've said suspicion, just take it with a pinch of salt. I think it's fine. Would not using and being fairly reclusive when it comes to social media possibly have an adverse effect? So Divya, I'm not saying that don't use social media. I'm definitely not saying don't be reclusive. I'm saying be careful before you comment on something, because you have friends that are commenting on something and you're using some kind of messaging which could be perceived as racial, stereotypical, maybe even sexual. So you have to be careful when you're using social media. I think it's a great place to sort of, it's a great place for you to pom-pom your own brand, to put it out there. what you stand for, things that you like. You could actually build an incredible story on social media that's married to your CV. That's just the perfect thing that colleges look for, recruiters look for, is that what you're saying in your CV is also what you're doing in your life. And the only way they sort of check that is they look at your social media platform. So I'm not telling anyone that don't go on it. I'm just saying that you cannot say something on your CV and have a different life on social media. That's not good. Rajiv, will you share my, there's someone who messaged me privately asking for my email ID. So would you just share it after the end of this and people can then reach out? Someone's asking, are there internships available for high school students in aerospace? This one's a little bit of a tough thing to manage, because most defense and aerospace organizations have a lot of security protocols, unfortunately, and they are not comfortable with high school interns. I can check back on this. I can check back with a couple of aerospace companies and check how comfortable they would be to have high school interns, and if they could consider them at least in their sales and marketing, their commercial organization. But it'd be very hard to get internship in R&D or manufacturing or, you know, the offset space. That would be very, very difficult if you're a high school student. How not to get upset when you have offers for internship, but then they get frozen, especially in times like this. It's, you know, again, I said it at the beginning that a lot of success in life is about persistence and pushing through the crap. You're going to get lots and lots of rejections in life. Better to get used to them and move on. It's not the end of the world. And especially, I think, you know, school students are going to have that, you know, because every school they apply to, they may not say yes to them. Every college that they apply to, they may say no. So, you know, it's about moving on. I hope I've answered your question, Akanksha. I think I've sort of gone through all the questions on the chat, Rajiv. If there's nothing else, what kind of internship? Tara
will take over.
Tara, if you don't know what you want to do after school, the best place for you to be is in a consulting firm or in a search firm, because we deal with such a large variety of industries, so many different, you know, kinds of careers. So it really helps. That's a really good place for you to be if you're not sure what you want to do after school. Okay, so
that we've come to the end of today's session. I'd like to thank you, Mrs. Shailja, and thank you all for attending today's talk. I hope you found it as useful as I did. Before we conclude today's session, just to remind you guys that our next talk is on the coming Sunday, and it's with Mr. Satish Chandra, the National Head of Abroad Education at Edu Milestones. He's going to talk about the education system in the US, UK, and Asian countries, application prerequisites and processes, and also selection criteria and approximate investment. Thank you again, and good night.
Good night.